Last year in 2024, I did a few different videos on growing cauliflower, right? That was the first year that I ever really grew cauliflower. And so now in 2025, I want to build upon that, taking what I've learned and applying that along with some new ideas to the cauliflower production this season. Last year, I primarily grew the hybrid variety Bermeo, and that did pretty well, considering that I've never grown cauliflower before, and I was able to get some edible heads off of that. But this year, I am growing a whole new variety, right? Because I want to grow something that's a little bit more stable genetically, right? Because I want to collect my own seeds. So this year I am experimenting with growing the green Macerata cauliflower. For one thing, it's not a hybrid, and for another thing, judging by what I've seen on the internet, it looks pretty cool. The green Macerata cauliflower produces light green heads, or also curds, right? Those are like the pre-blossom stage floret of growth. Typically these plants are started indoors, especially if you're starting them in the spring, at least here in this zone 6 to 7 climate. I always start mine indoors, late February, early March, for spring and early summer production. It typically seems to take about 6 to 10 days for these sprouts to emerge, or at least that has been my experience so far. Of course, again, these cauliflower can be spring sown or fall sown, right? If you do a fall sowing of cauliflower for a later fall crop, typically we'll start cauliflower in midsummer, like early to mid-July. And it's really important that they don't get too hot early in the season. If you're starting them in a hoop house, or if you're direct seeding them in the landscape, it might be good for them to have a little bit of cover, maybe a little bit of sun protection, especially during that high point of the day. And it's really important to make sure that they stay watered and hydrated, because it can get sweltering hot and things can dry out pretty fast. So this crop, again, likes cool conditions, but typically I'll start them once nighttime temperatures get into the 30s, 40s, that kind of thing. So definitely once you've planted these or transplanted them out in the garden and they're growing, they'll be more productive, more healthy in that earlier season, right? Before it gets super hot and sunny. For this particular variety, the green Macerata does not require any blanching. And so what that means is typically with traditional cauliflower, usually it's like a cream white in color. And generally, in order to get that coloration, people will have to tie up the upper leaves of the plant, rubber band them or tie them around that cauliflower head or that curd to keep the sun off, and it will keep that floret structure white and pale. But this type does not require that, probably because it's kind of more of like a greener head by nature. So it should be less work on our part if we grow this variety of cauliflower. And then the DTM, or days to maturity, is usually going to be 60 to 80 days after transplanting. So this crop of green Macerata I'll probably plant outside in the garden in late March or early April, once I'm sure that like the hard freezing conditions are pretty much past. Even if we get a few light freezes, it should be okay. If need be, I can cover some of the plants with a sheet or something overnight, and I will likely plant them into cages, because last year I discovered a little late that rodents really have a pretty good taste for cauliflower. And so I lost a bunch of plants due to the rodent herbivory happening on the landscape. And what's also important is that these cages are firmly set in the ground. The base of the cage has good soil contact, and to make sure of that, I'll use things like tent stakes and hammer those in, so that some of the animals will have a tougher time of burrowing in from underneath, right? Like the rabbits and some of the larger rodents. I'll probably be planting this variety in a single row per bed, because the plant can get pretty big, especially the leaves, and then I will be companioning this crop with sweet potatoes. Of course, I will plant the sweet potatoes much later in the season, but this cauliflower will be going in earlier. And so part of my thinking is that the sweet potatoes will be able to give some shade on top of the soil around the cauliflower to help cool down that soil, so that the cauliflower can be more productive further into the season, especially once it starts getting hotter. And so ideally that would be less stress for the cauliflower roots. And so last year I had pretty good success with the Bermeo variety. And so people may ask, well, why am I, completely changing the variety that I'm growing? So the answer to that is that Bermeo is actually a hybrid. So if I were to collect seeds from that, it would not be genetically stable, right? And I would have to collect seeds season after season, selecting for the traits that I want until I got hopefully more of a stabilized variety that is consistent with the traits that the Bermeo currently has in its hybrid form. And so instead of doing anything like that, because I do want to grow my own seeds, I chose to switch up the variety to the green Macerata, which is more of a traditional Italian variety, and it should be at least open pollinated. I'm not sure if it is an heirloom or not. Certain seed companies do claim that it is an heirloom, so it may be, but others note that it's open pollinated. Either way, whether it's heirloom or open pollinated, it should be genetically stable where I can actually get some good seed production off of that. But the main challenge I've had with seed production from cauliflower in general in the past has been that once the flower stalks start growing off of the cauliflowers, the plants just seem to like dry up and die. Like there's not enough energy going into flowering and pod formation. So I'm not totally sure why that is. Maybe it's a boron deficiency of not getting enough energy up into the flowers and the seeds, or something else is going on, or maybe it's getting too hot in the summertime. I'm not sure. So I'll be interested to kind of experiment with that a little bit more this year, hopefully, kind of hash out to see what's going on with that. Thank you so much for checking out this video on cauliflower. It's a food that I eat a lot of throughout the year, especially roasted cauliflower is a really big thing for me. And so I want to produce this food locally and without the use of plastic mulch and things of that nature. So I look forward to hopefully doing an update on this cauliflower variety and how it has produced and how it's grown, and new things that I've learned in 2025. Maybe it'll even spark a few videos, but anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.